ready to unlock a little bit of the power of now. We're diving deep into Eckhart Tolle today, hoping we can all find a little more peace and joy, right now.
You got it. And you can think of this deep dive as a journey to get to know your own mind a little better. It's really about understanding all that chatter, and maybe discovering a part of yourself that's always at peace.
I think we've all had those moments where our minds just won't quit. Like it's going a mile a minute and we can't make it stop.
It's true. And Tolle had a funny way of describing that. He said it's like our minds, a dog with a bone, just won't let go. Our minds love to latch on to problems. Heck, sometimes I think it even makes up new ones just to worry about.
You're telling me.
Yeah.
But how does that, I don't know, how does that connect to what he calls psychological time?
So psychological time. Imagine this. Okay, your mind is kind of stuck, either in the past, right, replaying all those old hurts and regrets and what ifs, or it's racing ahead into the future, worrying about stuff that hasn't even happened yet. And when we do that, when our minds are stuck like that, we're resisting the present moment, the only place where life is actually happening.
It's like we're so busy worrying about the past and the future that we totally miss out on what's right in front of us.
Yeah, and that's what creates that background noise of unease, right? Like anxiety, tension, that feeling.
Yeah, I think you've all been there.
It's like we get so caught up in the should-haves and what-ifs that we miss out on the beauty of what is, the now.
So how do we know if we're stuck in that cycle?
Well, Tolle offered this really powerful question. He said to ask yourself, and you can ask yourself this right now, is there joy, ease, and lightness in what I'm doing? If the answer is no, well, could be a sign that your mind is dragging you away from the present moment and creating, unnecessary suffering, really.
That's such a simple quote, but it's so profound when you actually stop and think about it. Like
Yes.
it makes you really tune in to your experience.
It really does. And it gets even more interesting because Tolle suggests there's a deeper dimension inside us beyond all the thinking, a state of pure consciousness, he called it, a being.
So you're saying there's a part of us that's always at peace, even when our thoughts are going crazy.
Yeah. It's like, imagine a shift. You go from being totally wrapped up in your thoughts to being the awareness that's observing those thoughts.
Stepping back from the movie screen of our minds and realizing, hey, we're not the movie after all.
Precisely. And just like there are tons of ways to get into a house, Tolle talks about these portals to access this inner stillness. He talks about focusing on your inner body, feeling your breath, feeling the aliveness inside you.
I've heard him talk about the senses too, right? Like really being present with your food.
Yeah.
Really tasting it. Or taking the time to notice the colors around you and the sounds.
And even something as simple as just noticing the space around you can be a portal. When you move your attention away from all the stuff, all the objects, and just notice the emptiness surrounding them, it's wild. You're connecting with a totally different dimension of awareness.
It's like we're finding stillness, not by forcing our minds to shut up, but by shifting our attention to something beyond thinking altogether.
Right. And what Tolle is saying is these practices, they're not about achieving bliss or anything. It's about realizing that peace, that stillness. It's always present. It's just hidden underneath all those thoughts and emotions.
So we're like archaeologists of the mind. We're peeling back the layers to reveal the stillness that's always been there, just waiting to be discovered.
I like that. But what happens when life throws a curveball? How do we handle all the challenges and the difficult emotions from this place of stillness?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
It's easy to talk about being peaceful when everything's smooth sailing. But what about when we're dealing with real struggles?
Yeah. And that's where this idea of surrender comes in. And it's often misunderstood, I think.
I get that. I used to think it meant giving up, just rolling over and letting life walk all over you. But Tolle meant something much deeper.
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't saying we should become doormats or deny what's happening. It's more about, it's about recognizing what's in your control and what's not, and choosing to accept what is.
So it's about choosing your battles.
In a way, yeah. It's realizing when you're resisting for no reason, which really just creates more suffering. Think about, being stuck in traffic.
Ugh, don't even get me started. The frustration, the impatience, the urge to just lay on the horn even though it won't change a thing.
Exactly. But see, in that moment, you can either resist the reality of the situation, which just makes you more stressed, right? Or you can surrender to it.
So instead of getting all worked up, I could, take a deep breath, accept that I'm stuck in traffic for now, and maybe use that time to, Finally listen to that new podcast I've been wanting to check out.
Now you're getting it. It's choosing to engage with life from this place of acceptance. Not fighting against it doesn't mean being passive, but you're choosing your battles wisely, responding to challenges with more wisdom and less reactivity.
It's funny you mentioned that. It reminds me of that story Toll tells about a butcher. The butcher who said, "Every piece of meat I have is the best." What did he mean by that?
Oh man, yeah. That's one of my favorites. So he's using this butcher as a metaphor for enlightenment, you see. Like, by saying every piece of meat is the best, no matter what, the butcher is showing total acceptance of what is right here, right now. There's no judgment, no wishing for something better.
It's like finding the good in every situation, even the tough ones. But it's not about pretending that everything is perfect, is it?
No, no, not at all. It's more about approaching life with that spirit of acceptance, recognizing that even when things are tough, there's always something to be grateful for, always something to learn, something to embrace, right?
So it's about shifting our perspective, changing our whole relationship to the present moment. But what about the really deep stuff, the parts of ourselves we don't even want to look at? That's where it gets really tricky, doesn't it?
That's where Tolle introduces the concept of the pain body, which he describes as a kind of energy field that holds the accumulated pain of our past.
So it's like a reservoir of old hurts, traumas, and negative emotions that we carry around with us.
Exactly. And often we're not even aware of it consciously. But it can manifest in our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, creating unnecessary suffering in our lives.
It's like those times when you snap at someone you love, and later you wonder, where did that come from?
Precisely. It's not necessarily that you're actually angry with that person in that moment. It's the pain body, reactivated by a trigger that's expressing itself.
So how do we deal with this pain body? Do we try to analyze it, understand its roots?
Tolle cautions against getting too caught up in analyzing the past. He says that while understanding its origins can be helpful, the real transformation happens in the present moment by bringing awareness to the pain body and choosing not to identify with it.
So it's about recognizing those negative thoughts and emotions as they arise, but not getting swept away by them, not letting them define us.
Yes, it's about creating a space between ourselves and the pain body, observing it with detachment and compassion.
He compares it to shining a light on a dark room,
Yeah.
right? Suddenly, those shadows that seem so scary lose their power.
That's a great analogy. As we become more aware of our pain body, we realize it's not who we truly are, it's simply energy. And like all energy, it can be transformed.
This makes me think about how we relate to others. If we're carrying around all this unresolved pain, it's bound to impact our relationships, right?
Absolutely. Tolle argues that much of the conflict we experience in relationships stems from our own unconscious patterns and unresolved pain.
It's like those buttons that people know just how to push, triggering those old wounds we thought had healed.
Exactly. And often we're projecting our own unresolved issues onto others, expecting them to fill a void that only we can fill.
So how do we move beyond those patterns and create healthier, more fulfilling relationships?
Tolle suggests that the key is to bring a higher level of consciousness to our interactions. This means becoming aware of our own triggers, practicing forgiveness, and choosing to respond with love rather than reacting from a place of ego.
It's about recognizing that everyone is fighting their own battles, carrying their own pain body.
Precisely. And that compassion and understanding are essential for creating harmonious relationships.
He also talks about how our ego often sabotages our relationships, right? It's constantly comparing, competing, seeking validation.
The ego thrives on separation, on feeling superior or inferior to others. It feeds on drama and conflict. It's always searching for something outside of itself to feel complete, which can create a lot of unhappiness in relationships.
It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy. We're so busy looking at what others have or don't have that we miss out on the beauty of our own lives and relationships.
And this ties back to the concept of being. When we're rooted in that sense of wholeness and completeness, we don't need to seek validation or fulfillment from external sources.
It's like we're enough, just as we are. And from that place of wholeness, we can connect with others in a more authentic and loving way.
Exactly. Tolle suggests that by shifting our focus from what can I get to what can I give in our relationships, we experience a deeper level of connection and fulfillment.
It's about recognizing that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, not from external achievements or possessions.
Which brings us to one of the most profound aspects of Tolle's teachings, the idea that true joy is not something we pursue in the future. It's available to us in this very moment.
So it's not about achieving some perfect state of happiness where everything is always rosy.
Not at all. Life will always have its ups and downs. But Tolle suggests that by surrendering to the present moment, by accepting what is, we open ourselves up to a deeper dimension of joy that's independent of external circumstances.
It's about finding peace and contentment in the midst of life's chaos, not waiting for it to arrive at some future destination.
Exactly. And this brings us to another crucial point, dealing with challenging emotions. Tolle suggests that we often make our negative emotions worse by resisting them, by trying to push them away or pretend they're not there.
It's like those times when you try so hard not to think about something, and it just makes you think about it even more.
Exactly. Tolle suggests that the key is to meet our emotions with a sense of acceptance and curiosity, rather than judgment or resistance.
So instead of saying, I shouldn't feel this way, we could ask ourselves, what is this emotion trying to teach me? What am I feeling in my body right now?
Precisely. It's about creating a space for those emotions to be felt and acknowledged without letting them control us. And in that space of awareness, something magical can happen.
The emotion begins to lose its grip on us. It's like that saying, what we resist persists. But when we bring awareness to our emotions, they often begin to dissipate on their own.
Exactly. And this ties back to the idea of surrender. When we stop fighting against our experience, when we allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling without judgment, we create the space for healing and transformation.
It's like we're no longer at war with ourselves. We're finally making peace with our own experience.
And from that place of inner peace, we're more equipped to navigate the challenges of life with grace and resilience. We're less reactive, more compassionate towards ourselves and others, and more open to the beauty and wonder that life has to offer, even in the midst of difficulty.
So we've talked about the inner work, finding that peace within. But what about the rest of life? How does living in the now, like Tolle talks about, change how we actually show up in the world? In our jobs, our relationships, all of it.
That's where the real magic happens. You see, when you cultivate that presence, it naturally flows into everything you do. You become more engaged, more focused, right, even more creative.
So it's not about like being peaceful on your meditation cushion and then forgetting about it in real life.
Exactly. Think about it. What if you brought that same presence, that awareness to, say, a work project? Or really savoring each bite of your meal? Or really listening, and I mean really listening, to your partner when they're talking? That's the power of now.
It's like that feeling of flow, when you're totally absorbed in something and time just kind of disappears. You're just there in the zone.
Exactly. And Tolle would say that flow, that's not something reserved just for artists or athletes, It's available to us all the time, in every moment, in every single task, if we just bring our full attention to it.
That makes me think about something else Tolle talks about, the importance of finding joy in the ordinary, everyday stuff.
Yes. He's always reminding us to appreciate those small, simple things. A beautiful sunset, a warm drink on a cold day, hearing a child laugh. We miss out on so much when we're always chasing after those bigger, better things.
It's like we're always waiting for something outside of ourselves to make us happy, instead of realizing that happiness, that joy. It's right here, right now, hidden in plain sight.
And you know what? When we shift our focus, when we start appreciating the present moment instead of chasing happiness in the future, something changes inside us. We start to feel a deeper sense of contentment, a real gratitude for what is.
It all comes back to what we were talking about before, the ego and its constant need for more, more, more. It's never satisfied, is it?
Nope. Always looking for the next thing to make it happy.
Right.
The next achievement, the next possession, the next whatever. But real fulfillment, that comes from within. It comes from aligning with the present moment.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we start to quiet that ego voice and really connect with now? Tolle talks about some specific practices, right?
He does, and I think one of the most powerful ones is self-observation. It's about noticing your thoughts and emotions as they come up, but without judging them. You're just observing.
Like taking a step back from the river of our thoughts.
Yeah.
Just watching it flow by and not getting pulled under by the current.
Exactly. And as you do that, as you practice that self-observation, you start to notice the patterns in your thinking, the same old habits, the way you react to things. And when you see them, you realize, hey, I have a choice here. I can keep letting these unconscious patterns run my life, or I can choose something different.
So it's not about like stopping our thoughts altogether. It's more like becoming more aware of them, seeing them from a distance.
Precisely. And another thing Tolle talks about that can really help with this is connecting with the inner body. He even calls it the portal to the unmanifested.
The portal to the unmanifested. What does he mean by that?
Well, he's saying that by focusing your attention on the sensations in your body, your breath, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the energy flowing through you, you can access a way deeper sense of presence, a stillness that's always there, just underneath all that mental chatter.
So we're dropping out of our heads and into our bodies,
Hmm.
noticing the sensations of the breath, the feeling of aliveness inside.
Yeah, exactly. And, Tolle says that even when you're stressed out, overwhelmed, you can take a moment to connect with your breath, feel your feet on the ground. And in that moment, you find this sense of grounding, like a little island of peace within.
Hitting the pause button on all that mental chaos and remembering that stillness is always available right here, right now.
You got it. And as you practice this way of being present, it starts to touch every part of your life, your relationships, your work, even just how you interact with everyone around you.
We become more conscious.
Exactly. And that's what the power of now is really all about, isn't it? Recognizing that true power comes from mastering our relationship to the present moment, not trying to control everything outside of us.
This deep dive has been incredible. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface of the power of now. But as we wrap up, is there one thing you want our listeners to really take away from all of this?
Remember this moment, right here, right now. This is all we ever really have. It's the only place where life is truly happening. It's the only place we can find joy, peace, fulfillment, anything that truly matters. Embrace the power of now, and I promise your life will transform.